I am grateful for this beautiful day. And I'm grateful that you're here. It's, we've been missing seeing you. I'm glad you're here. So everybody know this, the most religious thing that happens in the class? You're going to hear as part of the teaching today about the people who are watching online. We have now figured out through technology that we can see you too. So John Watson and Tim Leatherwood and Corbin Little, thank you for doing what you do. And no matter who you are or where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. So let's begin in silence to ground ourselves in our intention that we want to be present. Part of today's teaching is about presence. And we want to become aware that it is our intention. We talked about that last week, the role intentionality plays in spiritual practice. It is our intention to become aware that we live inside the heart of sacred mystery and that this sacred mystery seeks to find expression through who we are and how we live. So if it helps to close your eyes. May grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in my mouth and in my speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. And may grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may the power of new life work on all that we are and all that we do. And may we have the eyes to see and the courage to walk the wayless way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And may all creation benefit from what we do here. Amen. I read in a survey recently that 98% of the people who were in this survey believe that murder is wrong. Now, I'm wondering about that 2%. And I hope none of them are present. Because we're going to talk about murder, and that might be awkward for some of them. I think not committing murder is probably the one commandment that most of us think we've gotten nailed. I asked somebody the other day a usual question, and I ask when people come into the office, "How are you doing?" And the response I got was, "Well, so far I haven't murdered anyone this week, so basically I'm crushing it." I don't think that living as custodians of consciousness means just doing the bare minimum to stay out of prison. And most of us probably think that the commandment not to kill is the one commandment that we can say, well, at least I haven't blown that. However, there's that delicious theological word again. However, as with most things on the wayless way, Jesus quietly pulls up a chair and sits down and says, we need to talk about some things. You know, the earliest writings we have in human culture contain the Sumerian law codes of ancient Mesopotamia. That's over 5,000 years ago. And the oldest known written law codes, which is called the Codes of Urnami, or Namu, however you say that, includes explicit prohibitions against killing. Killing another person is punishable by death. And that's framed as a legal writing, not as a moral one. There are some laws called the laws from Eshnunu, which come about 1,000 years after that, which also prohibit killing and set penalties about it. And I'm sure you've all heard from high school about the Code of Hammurabi, which dates from about 2,000 years ago. And it contains multiple laws about murder, manslaughter, bodily harm. And some ancient Egyptian writings dating back to as early as 2000 BC shift to a more positive language, encouraging harmony, justice, not harming others. But it is not until you get to about 1200 BC, there's a period about from 1200 BC to 600 BC, about a 600 or 700 year period in there, that philosopher Karl Jaspers call the axial age, or the first axial age. There are some philosophers who think that we're in the turning of the great second axial age. And that always involves deconstruction and chaos, which is kind of where we are before something new happens. And in this first axial age, in 7 discretely different places all over the globe, when there was no way for people to communicate with each other, there arose out of human consciousness what we call the golden rule. What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. So it was during this time that the Hebrew prophets were working. It was during this time that what we call the 10 Commandments were written. And the 6th commandment is, you shall not kill, you shall not murder. Now, in spite of all of this, you can't get through the first 4 chapters of the Bible before there's a murder. You know the safety announcements they do on airplanes? The one that we experienced on British Air this summer going to and from London. We flew British Air, and their safety announcement is a work of art. It is so cleverly done. The video, the actors, everything, it's just amazing. Really guaranteed to get your attention. And if they were to include the 10 Commandments in the safety announcement, the flight attendant would calmly say, and please, for the comfort and safety of those around you, refrain from murdering others. That is simple. It is clear. And yet, somehow it is something we manage to screw up in almost every possible way. And not only do we screw it up, we actually enjoy it. The latest figures I can get for actual homicides in the United States were for 2023. In that year, in this country, there were 23,000 homicides, mostly committed by firearms. But the fictional murders were astronomically higher. Now you, like me, enjoy programs like Elsbeth, Father Brown, Sister Boniface, virtually any primetime drama show. There is a murder every week. One of the most popular TV series we have is called Only Murders in the Building. Father Brown, who's a character that was created by G.K. Chesterton, it's a long-running BBC show. I think it's in its 11th year. There have been 130 episodes so far. It's not a big community. And yet there is a murder there every week. It is not a place I would want to live or to be a pastor. Now, I could not find any content analysis about primetime commercial televisions, but it includes about 5 violent acts an hour. There are almost 140 on-screen, clearly described murders each weeknight on primetime commercial television. That's every night. I just finished reading the 10th, and I hope last, in a series of novels by Julia Spencer Fleming. The main character in these books is a female priest by the name of Claire Ferguson. She is a 35-year-old tough former Army helicopter pilot who, after leaving the Army, goes to seminary. And she's ordained a priest and is appointed to the small uptown town in upper New York, where she proceeds to have an affair with the police chief. Oh, this book has got everything. And together they solve the murders that occur in that small town, sometimes multiple murders. And I confess, I devoured these books. Got put on a waiting list for when the next one would come out. So, though we are all in the 98% of the people who think we wouldn't commit murder, we're fascinated by it. One of the longest established businesses in Houston is this one called Murder by the Book. We love murder. We love mayhem. Mayhem means meaning to maim, by the way. And that is why most social psychologists say people love NASCAR races, because they're hoping to see somebody maimed. So 98% say they don't believe in murder, but we're drawn to it. We're fascinated by it. And there's probably not a one of us who has not contemplated it. You're married? All right? I say that anybody who's been married 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years knows what it's like to want to cheerfully kill their spouse. What's worse? There is not a one of us who is not implicitly, however unconsciously or however unaware we are of it, we are all complicitly involved in committing it. Think about the tax dollars, your tax dollars, my tax dollars, that have funded genocide in Gaza. Now, if you think I'm being edgy, wait till next week. We're going to talk about sex. I'll just take a step back and see how we got here. But first, I want to address something that one of you online asked me. It's a very relevant question. And because the demographic in ordinary life is so diverse, and because we have new people coming in all the time, the question I got was, what one or two talks that you have given in here would you recommend that I read that will catch me up on virtually everything? I got an answer for that. And let me tell you, for those who are unaware, this is what the Ordinary Life landing page looks like. And if you go to where it says up there, archives, you will get this. And what is up there right now is last Sunday's teaching in audio, video, text, and Apple Podcast modalities. So it's all there, right there on that one page. And plus, for those of you who sometimes take pictures of the slides, on that, there is also at the bottom a link where you can see the slides from this presentation on Tuesday morning. Okay? You can download everything there. And I'm grateful for the technology that makes this possible. They used to be. I don't think they are anymore, but I can see about that. You want the cartoons? Okay. So at any rate, this person said, I've just started watching Ordinary Life, and I wonder if you could tell me what 2 or 3 presentations I should watch to catch up on what's going on. Easy to answer. I gave a teaching right before, pardon me, going on summer break called From Disintegration to Integration, Deconstruction to Construction. Deconstruction is a very important part of spiritual religious practice, and so is reconstruction. And in this talk, I gave the assumptions that we live in that we are unaware of. You remember the cartoon, this fish in the water, swimming by the younger fish saying, hey boys, how's the water? And the young fish say, what the hell is water? We're all immersed in water that we're unaware of. And I put about 14 of those assumptions in that talk. They're really important to know about. The assumption that we all live with is that nothing much important happened until about 2,000 years ago. The assumption that we live with is America is the best country and the center of the universe. The assumption that we live with is Christianity is the best or epitome religion. You don't have to believe in those things. It's just the water you swim in. There are many others listed, but and what I concluded is that we must become aware and alert to build up a counterculture to that, because we need to be more and more responsible, inclusive, and empowering for ourselves and other people who are living in this culture. What you and I believe, the assumptions by which we operate, where we get these beliefs and assumptions, and the evidence we use for claiming the truth of these things is critically important, and it is growing more so every day. I would also include the teaching I offered the first Sunday after that break, which is called Breathing Underwater. And in that teaching, what I tried to make clear is that if we are to live and survive in our current cultural context, we've got to transcend religion. So this is why I refer to myself as a trans-religious spiritual teacher attempting to be in the Jesus tradition. The real work at the heart of the journey we travel on the Wayless Way is to search for meaning that transcends humanly constructed religion. To be trans-religiously spiritual is to try to engage in the God that religion did not invent. Just what you learned in Sunday school as a kid. So one of the most deeply serious social, cultural, spiritual needs of our time is the need to think deeply and imaginatively and to be open to new light, to develop the ability to relate to that light and to outgrow the boundaries that keep us so divided. And it was in that talk that I quoted Dr. Carol Archer, who is a member of this church, who said that we are living at a level where we do not have the emotional intelligence to live. I also think that the talk I gave called The Custodians of Consciousness is important because, for one thing, there is no force stronger than spiritual realization. And we live in a culture where almost half of the adult population in this country is functionally illiterate. It's not a judgment, it's just a fact. And in addition to that, some of the smartest people I know, when it comes to some of the most important aspects of life and living, are dumb as bricks. As I said, all these presentations can be found on the website. Oh, you're such a genius, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is just water. Okay, meanwhile, back at the ranch. How did we get here? We got here today because we're talking about not killing others, which we all agree we shouldn't do, but which we enjoy. And we enjoy being entertained by, and then further, we're complicit in committing murder all the time. So I started out some time ago because I have this commitment to religious literacy, which grows out of the fact that religious illiteracy about the Jesus narrative has been a major contributing factor in the rise of Christian nationalism in our time. I started some time ago going through some narratives of Jesus, primarily the one that is on the left, the one by Stephen Mitchell, but also paying attention to Tolstoy's Gospel in Brief, which is not brief and it's not easy, and then the work by Richard Funk and Robert Funk and the Jesus Seminar. These are the only three collections of gospel narratives that we have outside the New Testament. So we got into that part of the narrative, which is found in the Gospel of Matthew, called the Sermon on the Mount. And I said that the Sermon on the Mount is the essence of all of Jesus' teachings. The essence of the Sermon on the Mount is the Beatitudes. And the essence of the essence of the essence of the Beatitudes is to live with humility, justice, and peace. So Matthew has it, and this is a parable. This didn't happen. Matthew has it that just like Moses, Matthew wanted to liken Jesus to Moses. Jesus went up on the mountain. Moses went up on the mountain to have intimate conversations with God. Jesus goes up on the mountain to have intimate conversations with people who are his followers. And I want to tell you that while doing the research and reading to prepare to be here, I have developed a renewed appreciation for the Gospel of Matthew. It is beautifully constructed. It is a work of art, and in so many ways. So after giving the Beatitudes, Jesus goes into what scholars call these transformative initiatives, where he takes something from Hebrew law and then just transforms it. Today is about murder. Now, when these passages come up in the lectionary for preaching, most clergy try to figure out ways to get out of them, to sidestep them or to soften them. After all, the one we're going to deal with next week, it says, don't get divorced. I would judge that half the adult population, at least maybe in this group, has been divorced. It's a dicey text. So the first of these initiatives has to do with killing. I'm going to read you two translations of them and then tell you how I think what applicability they have to us. Jesus said, as you know, our ancestors were told you must not kill, and whoever kills will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, those who are angry with a companion will be brought before a tribunal, and those who say to a companion, you moron, will be subject to the sentence of the court. And whoever says, you idiot, deserves the fires of Gehenna. Now here's the way Gene Peterson translates that same text. You're familiar with the command of the ancients, do not murder. I'm telling you that anyone who is so much as angry with a brother or sister is guilty of murder. Carelessly call a brother idiot, and you might just find yourself hauled into court. Thoughtlessly yell stupid. This is in the Bible. Some of you watched the news this past week. This is what Peterson translates. Thoughtlessly yell stupid at a sister, and you are on the brink of hellfire. The simple moral fact is that words kill. Now, Jesus never drove in Houston traffic. He wasn't married. He didn't have teenage kids. He didn't see what's going on in this country. And I do not know how people who call themselves believers in Jesus and who are strong Christian nationalists do with something like the president of this country recently responding to a reasonably well-phrased, intelligent question put to him by a female reporter and saying, you're stupid to ask such a question, and then turning to the female reporter standing next to her who had said nothing and saying to her, and so are you, just stupid. Now you're going to notice that as I deal with these teachings of Jesus, I'm going to try to acknowledge what meaning they had to and for the people who constructed them and to whom they were first communicated. But I also want to deconstruct and reconstruct them in a way that is relevant for us. As I said, Jesus didn't live in Houston. He didn't watch primetime television. He did live under a dictatorship and died at the hands of it as well. And we are moving more and more under an authoritarian government. So I want to hear and interpret Jesus in the context of our lives. You know, preachers and teachers are frequently tempted to say, you know, if Jesus were here to us, what he would say to us is, and then they would say. And the very best answer I have ever gotten to what Jesus would say if he were here with us today comes from Rob Negrin, who is actually here today. Rob says that what Jesus would say to us is, let's go get Mexican. Yeah, he was always saying, come on, come with me, come see, let's have a meal together. That's what he was saying. I think that what Jesus would say to us is, you people are just weird. So there is a man who is on his way for his first session with a spiritual director. He's waited for months to be able to see this person who had the reputation of being a very wise, understanding person. He had dressed very carefully. He wanted to make a good first impression. And as he drove to his appointment, he noticed that he was going to be very early. He had planned to be on time, not late, as was his usual habit, but it turned out that he had time to spare. So he stopped at a Starbucks, and along the way he bought a coffee, and on leaving the crowded coffee shop, not paying attention to where he was going, because he was focused on how he wanted to spend his time with this new spiritual guide in his life. He bumped into another customer coming into the coffee shop. His latte top came off the cup and spilled down the front of his shirt. This is what you can do with AI. So he got a good coffee bath. It was too late to go back home, change, so he went on to his appointment. And when he got to the director's office, and after they had introduced himself, he apologized for his soiled look, and he explained to him what had happened, just as I just explained to you. And when he had finished, the spiritual director said, "Why did you spill coffee on your shirt?" Now, the opinion that he had formed in his mind about this spiritual director just plummeted. He had just spent 5 precious minutes of his time explaining what had happened. Nonetheless, he repeated his story. To which the spiritual director said, "No, that's not correct. Why did you spill coffee on your shirt?" So once again, the man explained, slower this time, sort of like you would talk to a third grader. "I thought I had plenty of time to stop and get a coffee on the way here. As I was leaving the Starbucks, I wasn't paying the attention I should have, and I bumped into a man coming into the place. When this happened, the lid came off my cup, the coffee spilled all down the front of my shirt. That is how it happened, you imbecile." Now, he didn't say it last part, but it's what he thought. He was embarrassed about having to explain this faux pas, continuing to be pointed out. And I think had I been that spiritual director, I would have said, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. Everybody has accidents, we all get thoughtless, we bump into people. If I had an extra shirt, I would loan it to you, forget about it." But not this spiritual director. So when the man had finished his third explanation, once again the teacher said, "No, that's not correct. You spill coffee on yourself because that was what was in the cup. All of us get distracted and experience the accidents and unintended consequences you did. You got coffee on yourself because coffee was in the cup. And that's what spilled out at you, just as the anger and rage you wanted to express to me. Let's get to work." And it was then that the man knew he had found a good spiritual director. So in a variety of ways in this teaching and the ones that follow, Jesus is asking us, what's in your cup? And his desire, like any worthy spiritual teacher, and this transcends all religion, his desire was that we be filled with what? You're going to be asked this when you get to heaven. If you make it. His desire is that we be filled with humility, justice, and peace. Simple, you can remember that. But disciples kept forgetting all the time. And later on he will say, "Have I been with you so long?" What's in your cup? We are a nation filled with paradoxes. I don't know if any of you saw Ken Burns' recent series on the American Revolution. It's long. Some of it is tedious. But I kept thinking as I watched it, America began as a nation of slave owners who wanted to be free. Duh. Now, I don't know if you missed the hubbub that followed the killing of Turning Point founder and Christian National bamboozler Charlie Kirk. But I want to share with you something he said about killing. You know, I confess, I never heard of Charlie Kirk until after he was murdered, because I'm not in that circle of media. Charlie Kirk said on his podcast that he wanted, quote, to see corporate-sponsored TV executions of Donald Trump's political opponents. I'm quoting. It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised. You could sell this. You could fund the government with this. You could have it like brought to you by Coca-Cola. And he suggested that children should be made to watch public murder, and that such executions, again I'm quoting, should be taken in a holy way. Anti-Semitic podcaster Nick Fuentes announced that under his America First movement, quote, all non-Christians would be executed. Again, I am quoting, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. They must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. These two guys have a huge following, particularly among the young in America's population. They're not blips on the radar. These are big deals. So the Christian right worships the right to bear arms. They do not worship the anti-violent Jesus. So in the Jesus narrative, and I can remember where I was when this became such a turning point for me regarding nonviolence. In the Jesus narrative, they come to take Jesus to turn him over to be executed. Fueled by a Christian nationalist kind of movement or a religious nationalist movement, the religious people and the government got together to make this happen. Jesus was executed by Rome because Jews didn't crucify people, they stoned people. Rome crucified people, but the Jewish leaders backed it up. So they come to take Jesus in that narrative, and one of Jesus' followers pulls out a sword, and Jesus says, no, you put that back. We are not going to deal with that this way. And I will say to anyone, if you're elevating yourself above others based on your belief in Jesus, then you don't believe in Jesus. His first teaching was about humility, and then justice and peace. So some people on the Christian right are fond of saying, well, Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace but a sword. That's true. That's one of the most authentic sayings of Jesus that we have in the database. However, he didn't mean a literal sword. He meant the division, the ideas of radical love, justice, and equality can and do cause in a society that is structured around patriarchy, religious legalism, and imperial oppression, all of which are growing in our country. Now, I am fully aware that I am not nearly as wise and understanding as either Jesus or the spiritual director in the story that I told. But I will say that my observation is that there is a spirit of malaise that is spread over many in our country, including people in our demographic, who feel powerless and hopeless about the future. This hopelessness lays like a fog over us. It did in the time of Jesus as well, at least to the people to whom he spoke. And the reason that they responded so positively to him was that they saw that he saw them and that he communicated to them words of hope. I think there are fewer things that can make a person or a group crazier than expecting something from someone who does not have the ability to give it. Few things can be more frustrating than trying to make a person or a group be something that they aren't and maybe can't be. And when that is the case, it's time for us to let go and pay attention to what's in our cup. It is just with immense relief that we get filled when we stop denying reality and accept what is. If we are to be custodians of consciousness, we must learn to love in a way that takes reality into account, and we must be careful about how we define reality. So in the circumstances where we are, we have to take personal responsibility for our own lives and living. We have to know what's in our cup. And in these transformative initiatives that we're getting into, my current reading is that Jesus is encouraging us to get involved in the spiritual work that I'm going to call activation of presence, with a capital P. Or if you don't like that phrase, you can say activation of love. So what Jesus is calling for when he says, you have heard it say, but I say to you, he's calling us to get a new thinking about what's in your cup. He's saying, learn to observe and catch those moments of judgment, greed, fear, and resentment that can so poison you from the inside. Notice your lack of presence. Again and again and again, he said, wake up, be here, pay attention. Are you with me? Can you stay awake? He pointed out how people were preoccupied with things that didn't matter. And everybody in this room knows what I'm talking about. Excuse me. The games we play, the gossip we get involved with, the self-talk that we have, the lying that we do, justifying what we do. And now doing this activation of presence is not painless. He said it's going to cost you. But to murder in the various ways that we do is to make the ego the center of gravity. And he wanted it to be the self. One of my teachers years ago, when I was complaining about how other people could be, you know, we always want to pay attention to how other people should be doing and not ourselves. He said the ego that fails to see that it is asleep can justify anything. And you know that's true. We can rationalize doing anything we want to do. This is why, if I point out to a larger population what the president said and calling somebody stupid, they'll say, oh, it's okay. It didn't matter. It's not that big a deal. Or people can hear quotes from Charlie Kirk or Nick Fuentes and say, well, it's what my group feels. It's what we believe. It's what we hold to. It's okay. And in doing these teachings, Jesus is encouraging us to transcend the fear and the judgment that imprison us. I mean, that's what drives people to commit murder of various kinds, is fear. I'm going to get hurt. They have something I want. They don't believe like I do. Bang, in one way or another. I've been reading 2 books. I'm on my second one now, of Sufi theology. They are beautiful, just beautiful. And you know, Kabir, the poet, was a Sufi dervish. And so the current book is based on interpretation of the poems of Sufi, or the writings of Sufi, much as I'm trying to do with the writings of Jesus. That's what this writer's doing. And this is a poem I found this week I'd never read before, but I just think it is exquisite. I hope you do too. Kabir says, "Look at yourself trembling, afraid of non-existence. Know that non-existence is also afraid that God might bring it into existence. If you grasp at worldly dignities, it's from fear too. Everything except love of the most beautiful is really agony. It's agony." What's in your cup? I don't know about what you would think, but from a 30,000 view point, looking down on the teachings of Jesus, I think that what Jesus thought was in what most people's cup is fear. I think that maybe one way to describe the entire work on the Wayless Way journey is that of overcoming fear. Activation of presence, which means working to see and sustain a conscious relationship to our state, state of being, begins to loosen. That's why meditation, spiritual practice is so important. You can't be aware of your state if you don't take time to pay attention to it. But it's when we become aware of and loosen the grip that our state has upon us, that we are set free or freer. Activation of presence gives us and other people some room to move around in and to live with more love and compassion and justice and peace. Now, there are some of you who might be thinking, yeah, but there are justifiable fears, and there are. We are all of the nature to grow old, get sick, and die. We are all of the nature to lose everything we hold dear. No exceptions. I wrote our Christmas letter this year, or a draft of it, and I thought about how many people who are dear to us have died this past year. And I thought, well, this is the consequence I get for living so long. That's a joke. Or it was meant to be funny. And then I thought about all the parents of children who died at Camp Mystic. I think of all the people in Gaza. I think about people who living with a terminal illness, who know it. We all are, just some of us pretend we aren't. Right? Aren't you glad you came today? Such a happy thought. People are living with dementia, with people who have dementia. People are living with people who have terminal illness. I mean, you could go on, yeah, there are a lot of things to be afraid of. Real things. And for now, what I will say about that is that the cure to that is to learn to die before you die. And it's another topic for another time. Maybe we'll get to it. But I'll offer you this. It's not my notes. I'll offer you this. The first line in the words that I read for my own spiritual practice every day after sitting, the first line I read is, "Today may be the day that I die." May an awareness of this influence how I live this day. Every day. I got that from the Buddhists. It's being this activation of presence that allows us to be open to this without being filled with murderous rage. Whatever takes us out of presence is what is in our cup. And it ends up killing us and others. And it was something about which Jesus said, don't do that. To be free of fear, we have to love very, very, very much. What's in your cup? No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargo, so see you here next Sunday right here. Thank you.